Hi, my name is Bob Watson. I chair the International Panel on Biodiversity and Ecosystem Services. And yes, good. So we have good news and we have bad news. As you already heard this morning, the good news is we are producing more food, we're producing more food per capita, and the number of people undernourished has fallen. The bad news is we still have 1 billion people in the world that are undernourished, an equal number of people that are effectively obese. Child malnutrition is still absolutely unacceptably high. We have food price volatility that only hurts the poor and badly hurts the poor in all countries. And this emphasis on increasing yields in the way we've been doing it is causing major damage to environmental systems, climate change, biodiversity, water, air pollution. So we have some major challenges. How do we increase food productivity in a sustainable manner to feed the world's population that is growing? 7 and a bit billion people now, 9 to 10 billion people by 2050. We need to feed the world, we need to improve rural livelihoods, and we need to stimulate economic growth, sustainable economic growth. But we have a series of challenges. Less labour, both from disease, rural to urban migration, less water due to competition for water. We have less arable land for competition from other sources. Agricultural yields are not increasing in the way they were in the 1980s and 1990s. We have land policy conflicts. We have air quality problems, water quality problems, and particularly loss of biodiversity at the genetic, species and ecosystem level, and climate is changing. Major challenges of how do we feed the world in a way that is economically, socially, and environmentally sustainable. So, in human-induced climate change, first, agriculture is a major contribution to greenhouse gas emissions, whether it be from deforestation, animal production, use of fertilizers, etc. Also, loss of biodiversity, especially due to extensification, conversion of our forests, conversion of our mangrove systems into shrimp farms, really a major issue. Fundamentally, climate change and biodiversity adversely affect agricultural production, and agricultural production, the way we do it today, adversely affects climate change and biodiversity. So the fundamental question is, how can we totally change the system? It's not just the way we produce food, it is the way we produce food, but it's food waste, as you've already heard about, and it indeed, of course, is the diets. We need good economic outcomes, and you can read it for yourselves. We need good environmental outcomes, and we need good social outcomes. Better diets, reduce greenhouse gas emissions, greater efficiency along the total food chain. Major challenges face us, but it is all doable. With respect to climate change, we have some major science and technology challenge. How do we address the water deficit problem? It's manageable. We can actually produce drought-tolerant crops, and we can have much, much better, say, drip irrigation technologies. We need to safeguard pollinators. Bees and other pollinators are in decline in nearly all parts of the world. There are many ways we can protect our pollinators and pollination services. We need to conserve the wild relatives of crops. We've got increased agricultural production by going to monocultures, but it's much more vulnerable to environmental change, including climate change. We have to address things like soil fertility, nutritional quality of food. We have to look at the temperature tolerance of crops. Even with the Paris Agreement, it is absolutely inevitable the climate will change. And actually, the Paris Agreement will not reach the 2-degree target, will not reach the 1.5-degree target, unless we significantly strengthen the Paris pledges. We'll pass the 1.5 target in 2030. We'll pass the 2-degree target probably around 2055, 2060, 65. In other words, Paris is a major step in the right direction, but it is one small step in a very, very long journey, basically. So we've got some real interesting challenges ahead of us. So what do we need to do? We clearly need to embed economic, environmental and social sustainability in our agricultural policy strategies. There's no question. We have to address today's hunger problem, and we can do it with actually current technology. Most current technology, especially if we use agroecological processes, can actually lead us to a sustainable world. We're just not applying the best science today. We've actually got to decrease, as you've already heard, post-harvest loss, a major, major challenge. Advanced biotechnologies, often by many people known, but not just genetic modification, that's just one part of advanced biotechnology, may have to play a role, but we absolutely must look at the risks and benefits before we deploy those technologies on a larger scale. We need to pay farmers to produce food in an environmentally sustainable manner. Payment for ecological services. It's done in some parts of the world, but not enough, basically. We clearly have to reform trade and eliminate production subsidies, absolutely destroying production systems in different parts of the world. And we need much more transdisciplinary research. We need co-design of research, co-production of research. What is needed is an international assessment on sustainable food production system. Much is going on in the world, but I think we need even more. We have to have plausible projections of diets and food demand. This is going to really, over the next 50 years or so, we need to say, what can we do to reduce food waste? Can we take into account changes in the economy, technology, socio-political systems, culture, and demography? We also have to ask ourselves plausibly, how will climate change, how will biodiversity change, and how will technology change? So clearly we have a challenge in front of us of what could happen plausibly in the future. The programme I now chair is parallel to the Intergovernmental Panel on Climate Change, but it's a biodiversity and ecosystem service. We recognise there's diverse worldviews. The normal view, which is in green, is we have drivers of change. It starts with institutions and governance systems, indirect drivers, demography, economic, socio-political systems, culture and technology. Affects the direct drivers, the anthropogenic drivers. That affects biodiversity directly and ecosystems. That affects the goods and services that we get from ecosystems, which then change human well-being. But there's another view of the world, the Mother Earth, the indigenous local communities' view of the world. There's Mother Earth, different systems of life. They give us nature's gifts. And then we have living in harmony with nature, living in balance with Mother Earth. So we've recognised that there's more of a Western view of science and a more Mother Earth view. And we bring both of them in. It's a framework that can be used from local to global, obviously national and regional, and it can look at time. We often look back 50 years and forward 50 years. We've finished 2 assessments, one on pollination, and we looked effectively, what was the importance of pollination? What were the trends in pollinators? What were the economic implications of the loss of pollinators and pollination services? What were the major risks and what were the solutions? The crucial piece is, what are the solutions? So this, and you can read it quicker than I can say it, we looked at land use change, intensive agricultural management, pesticides, pathogens and pests, climate change, invasive aliens. They are the major threats today in different parts of the world to pollinate. And they all have a series of solutions. One of the key political issues is pesticides. Do pesticides adversely affect pollination and pollination? And in particular, do neonicotinoids? We addressed that, and we actually came up with a series of potential policy actions. They were embraced by the Convention on Biological Diversity, and they were embraced by a large number of countries that have put together a coalition of the willing to save pollinators and to save pollination services. Oops, sorry. The other assessment we finished was one effectively on how do you look at scenarios, exploratory scenarios. What could the future look like, given that we don't know what the future is? Target seeking, we want to achieve this. What are the different pathways to achieve it? Policy evaluation, people put policies in place. Did they work or not? You can test that. And what's the potential advantage of policy A over policy B? We're currently doing a global assessment, and we're doing 4 regional assessments. In every case, we're looking, why are we losing biodiversity? Why are we degrading our ecosystems? What are the implications for human well-being? And agriculture is a central part of all of it. A major driver of land use change are our forestries and agricultural practices. We're destroying the world's oceans, as we know. So in these assessments, we will look very carefully at the implications of food production systems on biodiversity. But I do believe we may, in addition, need another focused assessment, really looking at the full issue from how do you sustainably produce food all the way to the diet issue, use exploratory scenarios to look forward 50 years, learning from history, and really making sure all partners are involved. Governments, the private sector, the NGOs, civil society, the scientific community. Thank you.